Hi everyone, I'm Sean Speck, and for this project I worked with Jimmy Hernandez, Bryn Fallon, and Andy Garcia. I'm going to be discussing climate change in Myanmar. I'll give an overview of the culture, the economy, and the current climate, and then I will talk about some of the projected changes to climate and some potential mitigation strategies that Myanmar can use to help mitigate for climate change. And just to give a quick overview of the country, Myanmar, also known as Burma, is the largest country in mainland Southeast Asia. It shares borders with Thailand, Laos, China, India, and Bangladesh, and has a long coastline of the Bay of Bengal and the Andaman Sea to the southwest. Climate change is a significant and growing threat to Myanmar's development. There's been an increasing frequency and intensity of natural disasters like cyclones, rising sea levels, and this all has great socioeconomic implications for the country. Urgent action is needed to mitigate these impacts and build resilience within the vulnerable communities of Myanmar. Just a little overview about the people and culture of Myanmar is a relatively large country with a population of about 54 million. Um, the religion of Myanmar is about 89% Buddhist. Primary language spoken is Burmese, and the culture is heavy with traditions and festivals. Myanmar's traditional culture is an amalgam of local folk and royal culture. Buddhism has been a part of Myanmar's culture since the first century AD and has blended with non Buddhist beliefs. The most conspicuous manifestation of the Buddhist culture is the magnificent architecture and sculpture of Myanmar's many temples and monasteries. There are over 13,000 notable temples and monasteries in the country, notably those at Pagan, Mandalay, and Yangon, which are three of the country's biggest cities. So the economy in Myanmar is still developing. It's a mixed economy and is currently transitioning from a state-controlled to a more market-oriented system. The country has vast natural resources. However, the undeveloped economy has not allowed Myanmar to reap fully the benefits of its resources. And agriculture is a major part of the economy, employing about two-thirds of all of the workforce. There's been some political instability and conflict, which has led to a weak currency and hindered some economic development. However, the government is currently implementing reforms to encourage foreign investment and modernize the economy. However, there's still a long way to go, and the country will need to address its political and social challenges to fully realize its economic potential. And this is going to become increasingly important as climate change threatens their coastlines, their agricultural production, as well as the health and well being of their citizens. The current climate in Myanmar is widely varied. However, overall, it can be considered a tropical monsoon climate, meaning it has extraordinarily rainy wet seasons and pronounced dry seasons. There are three dominant seasons in Myanmar: March through May being the hot season, June through October being the wet season, and then November and February is considered the cool season. There are many different varying climates across Myanmar's different ecological zones that you can see here in this map. And the climate in these ecological zones is varied mainly by its distance from the coast and the altitude. So there are several risk factors associated with climate change in Myanmar. First of those being extreme temperatures. During the summer of 2010, there were 1,500 heat-related disorders and reported 260 heat-related deaths across Myanmar. Drought is becoming a more significant issue, and drought years with moderate intensity were frequent in the 1980s and 90s. Extended dry seasons and increased temperatures have caused an increase in the prevalence of drought, and severe drought has increased in frequency from 1990 to 2010. Severe drought has diminished village water resources across the country and destroyed agricultural yields of peas, sugarcane, tomato, and rice. In the past, before 2000, cyclones made landfall along Myanmar's coast once every 3 years. But since the turn of the century, cyclones have made landfall along Myanmar's coastline every single year. And this has led to flooding and storm surge events. And from 1910 to 2000, there have been 12 major floods in the country. And since 2000, there have been an additional 12 major floods recorded in the country. Um, this is caused by heavy rainfall events that have become unpredictable with regular reports of record-breaking rainfall. And over the period of 1960 to 2009, shorter rainfall seasons in combination with erratic and intense rainfall resulted in numerous flooding events. There have been numerous issues regarding flooding and storm surge in Myanmar. Millions are affected and hundreds are killed during every major flood and storm event. Floodwater contamination leads to water scarcity within the country, and residents are forced to seek shelter in temporary camps, which um, can also be detrimental to the health of the citizenry. So the adaptation strategies that we're recommending for Myanmar include a investment in the stormwater infrastructure of the country and also restoration of the mangroves along the coastline. So this investment in stormwater infrastructure in Myanmar is really important. The country's seen a pretty rapid urbanization, but insufficient infrastructure development overall, and this has resulted in inadequate stormwater management systems in many urban areas. In Yangon, for example, the country's largest city, the drainage system is outdated and prone to flooding, particularly during the monsoon season, and many streets and neighborhoods flood regularly, causing significant damage to property and posing health risks to residents. The government has acknowledged the need to improve the stormwater infrastructure in urban areas and has initiated some projects to upgrade drainage systems and build new retention ponds to manage stormwater runoff. However, progress has been slow due to limited resources and technical capacity. And this is where the international community could step in using our expertise on managing stormwater, and as well as our more developed funding sources. We should try and help Myanmar foot some of the bill due to climate change, considering they are very, very small emitters of greenhouse gases, while the neighboring countries and countries like the United States have the lion's share of responsibility for emissions and should therefore be responsible to help Myanmar update their stormwater infrastructure. The second part of our mitigation strategy involves the restoration of the mangrove ecosystems in Myanmar, which have been degraded roughly 90% along coastlines. These areas create natural sea barriers, natural seawalls, and can help protect against shoreline damage. They are living shorelines and can intercept stormwater runoff before it enters coastal waters. Concrete storm walls can't do anything to remove the nutrients from these waters, and mangrove trees, however, rely on nitrogen and phosphorus to live like any other plant and can filter those from the water, improving water quality. Mangroves have been proven to significantly reduce the damage during hurricanes and monsoons. And in Florida, a study found that mangroves reduced flood damage by $1.5 billion and protected more than 500,000 people during Hurricane Irma. Counties that had some mangrove protection had 25% less damage than others. So overall, mangroves would aim to combat climate change and Myanmar's flooding and storm surges that are becoming increasingly frequent due to climate change. We believe that the major polluters of the world should contribute the cost to the restoration of these mangroves, and the impact of our actions can help benefit Myanmar and help reestablish critical ecosystems. So the primary locations to focus the stormwater infrastructures are in the major cities in Myanmar. And for the mangrove restorations, the primary focus needs to be along the coast of the Andaman Sea. And it would cost at least $100 billion to update stormwater infrastructure in all the major cities in Myanmar. And the estimated cost for a restoration project of mangroves ranges anywhere from $225 per hectare to $216,000 per hectare. So these are very costly endeavors, and Myanmar is only recently opening up its borders to international trade. And as investment in the country increases, it's very important that we are offering expertise and support financially and informationally to help Myanmar mitigate for the inevitable changes it's going to see due to climate change. And thank you so much for listening. And here is our works cited.